He's gotta be asleep by now.
He used to stay awake all night waiting for Santa.
I think those days are just about over.
Well, you coming?
Where?
Why, to the North Pole, of course. This is the Polar Express.
Hey, you. Do you know what kind of train this is?
It's a magic train. Christmas just doesn't work out for me. Never has.
What exactly is your persuasion on the big man?
Well, I want to believe, but...
But you don't want to be caught. You don't want to be bamboozled. You don't want to be taken for a ride, railroaded. Seeing is believing. Am I right?
There is the North Pole.
Stop the train! Stop the train!
Which one of these is the brake? He said this was the brake.
Are you sure?
Get us the blazes out of here!
I wanted to do that my whole life.
It's here. It's here. Where?
Just remember, the true spirit of Christmas lies in your heart.
All right, well, we thought that this would be the perfect movie to wrap up our Christmas at the Movies series. We've been doing several movies every week, and I think we've just about exhausted every possible Christmas movie over the last 7 years that we've done this. I'm looking back now, and thank God, when God gave us this idea for Christmas at the Movies, some of you are like, how did you guys come up with this? Necessity is the mother of invention. All right, where we were starting off in the school, and everybody's having all these fancy musicals and everything like that, and we were like, what can we do? We don't have all that, and so we just said, why don't we just give away a bunch of candy and popcorn and show some a Christmas movie, and then preach the gospel for some of those things. Ladies and gentlemen, there are churches that are all over our area. I'm sending the manuscripts and stuff like that to them all the time. I'm like, hey man, God gave us this out of necessity and desperation. Come on. Some of y'all know what I'm talking about. And so the thing that I love so much about this particular movie is that the whole thing can be summed up. The whole movie is summed up in one word, and it's the word believe. And if you didn't know this, right now, this time of the year, there are a lot of people that are questioning their whole entire belief system. And kind of let you know, I realized a couple of years ago, while a lot of churches, especially larger churches, they'll do a lot of musicals during this time, and there's not a lot of preaching because there's such a pull from the congregation during the holiday season. Can I let you know, every week I can feel your burdens while I'm up here, but I especially feel it more during the holiday season because there are some of us that right now we're pretty desperate. And I believe the Holy Spirit has a word for you today. In the last couple of weeks, I've done a lot of teaching. But if y'all don't mind, today I'm going to be doing some preaching. Is that cool with y'all? All right, because we're going to leave here encouraged today. You're going to leave here so high, you're going to be able to go duck hunting with a rake. Come on, y'all know what I'm talking about? So anyway, during this time of the year, there are more suicides between Thanksgiving and Christmas than there are between January and November combined because people lose their hope. And they don't know what to believe in anymore. Maybe you're here today and you're still undecided about your spiritual journey. Here's what we built this church for you, okay? Sit back, relax. We don't want you to feel any pressure. We like you, and you don't have to do our thing to be our friend, all right? Y'all know what I'm talking about? This last week, as a person I know on Facebook, And, with this election, you reckon that's been a little bit divisive? and one guy posted on this. He doesn't go to our church, so I can make fun of him. And he said, man, can so-and-so vote a particular way and still be a Christian? And I was like, what kind of an idiot are you? What kind of pastor? What are you saying to these type of people? Ladies and gentlemen, let me let you know something. Our philosophy at this church is this. We love everybody and you're next. You ain't got to vote like us, look like us, or do what we do to be our friend. Come on, everybody knows here, we got one philosophy here. We love everybody and you're next, okay? So that's what we're all about. And if you're on a journey, just understand that all of us are on a journey. I mean, I remember when I was on a 19-year journey whenever I gave my life to Christ. And so today I want to let you know there are some things that I'm still trying to figure out with God and believing. All right, I've got 20 years of advanced theological training and 43 years of circling around the sun. And the closer I get with Jesus, the more I realize I don't have everything figured out. Do you know what I'm talking about? And by the way, if you want me to take sides on an issue, there's a lot of the issues that I stand for the Bible. All right. There are people that be like, Pastor Chad, what do you think about so-and-so? I ain't done thinking about that yet. And you ain't going to put me in that box over there. I don't know how I feel about it. I'm going to pray about it. And wisdom's proven right by their actions. But ladies and gentlemen, there are some things I don't have the answer on. Some of you would be like, no way. You are so wise and learned, PC. How can you not have the answers? If you don't have the answers, who does? God. The one thing that you'll discover, for those of you that have a desire to go to Bible college, let me let you know what you're going to learn in Bible college. Two things. There is a God and you're not him. That's it. All right. The rest is just semantics and the rest of it. Okay. So for those of us that have questions and still trying to discover what we believe, let me let you know three quick things about the area of believing that can give you some hope today and encourage you. The first thing that I want to let you know is that you and we can believe and still have questions. Isn't that awesome? You and I don't have to have it all figured out because guess what happens whenever you figure it out? It means that you're dead and in heaven. All right. So it doesn't happen on this planet. All right. You can have more peace about what you believe, but you can also have more peace about the questions that you have. God's never intimidated by our questions. Do you know that? It's not one of those things where you could come to God today and ask God and God's not going to scratch his head and say, you know what? I never thought about that. Can I let you know God's never had a thought? God's never sat back with somebody like, God, I want to know about this. God never said, you know what? That never occurred to me. Think about this. Our God is just like us. It excites God to tell us about himself. Do you know that's everybody's favorite topic? Themselves. You know, I taught my little boy before kindergarten. You guys are going to love this. My little boy, I got taught this by my dad. Some of you have met my dad. Big personality, loves people. I mean, dude, my dad could sell a glass of water to a drowning man. You know, people just love my dad. My dad taught me how to be a people person, and I wanted to pass down that legacy. So the first day at kindergarten, I was saying, Evan, I want to show you how to introduce yourself to some people. And he's like, well, Dad, I don't like that. I was like, the Bible says in Proverbs, righteous are as bold as lions. You're going to be able to go to somebody. Every room's better because you're there. All right. And so I said, and you're going to talk to them about their favorite subject. And he said, what's that? I said, themselves. I said, so walk up to them and I'll go through the routine. And the next day, the first person at the day of kindergarten was his headmaster of his school. And so Evan, charged up by his dad's thing, he walks up to him and he goes, hi, what's your name? And he goes, I'm Evan. What's your name? And he goes, well, my name is Mr. Eustace. And he looked at him and he goes, Mr. Eustace. Never met a man named Mr. Eustace that I didn't like. Put her there, pal. You know? And the headmaster goes, he looks at me and I'm just rolling laughing. And he goes, Evan, would you please show your class how to do that? And Evan turned around and looked at me and was like, you know, and I was like, attaboy. Think about this. If we like to talk about ourselves, how much more would God like to reveal himself to people who have questions? God loves to reveal himself to us. And some of us have had dreams that maybe we've forgotten about. But let me tell you something, ladies and gentlemen. God hasn't forgotten about it. Can I let you know all of our questions, God has a criteria. It's found in Hebrews 11:6. And it says this. Without faith, it is impossible to please God because anyone who comes to him must believe that he exists and that he rewards those who earnestly seek him. Now, most of the world doesn't have a problem with believing that God exists. But where the rubber meets the roads is believing that God exists and that he's a rewarder of those who diligently seek him. You see, when you consider that if God exists, why wouldn't he want to show himself to you and bless your life? You see, ladies and gentlemen, I believe too many people go through life absolutely robbed. They're robbed of the joy and peace that seems to be so prominent during Christmas. You know, I know some people were a little bit more middle of the road, and I've kind of got that sanguine personality where I'm optimistic. I got taught to be able to do that, and there are some people like Pastor Chad. You got to understand something. I protect myself from disappointment. All right, I'm not getting my expectations up. I remember talking with some people from the Depression one time, and look, the Depression was tough, but they developed this mindset. And I remember one time talking to this person who was raised in the Depression. They said, "Let me tell you something. I've watched you, and I've noticed something, and let me give you some wisdom, young man." And I was like, "Lay it on me." And they said, "Don't you let yourself get too happy." And I was like, "What?" She's like, "Because the day you let yourself get too happy, that's when everything comes crumbling down." I was like, "Man, who peed in your Cheerios? Who wants to be around somebody like that?" I mean, dear God. I mean, where somebody's constant, don't let yourself get too happy. Can that happen? No, ladies and gentlemen, the one attribute that you and I are supposed to have if we're Christ followers is the attribute of joy. Where, yeah, you know what, dude? It doesn't mean that everything's going my way, but I serve a God of hope that helps us. Well, Pastor, I'm just so fearful of the future. You don't have to be. God, you know what I've learned about fear? Fear will not cancel out the blessings of God. Our fears just keep us from enjoying the blessings of God. We're like, man, have you ever gone back and said, you know what? That was not so bad. By the way, I want to encourage you this new year, for those of you that have not been baptized yet, you need to be baptized, water baptized. There are some of you that are like, well, I don't know about that baptizing stuff. And I'm like, what's there not to know? All right, well, Pastor Chetty, I'm just that kind of freaks me out. I'm like, really? Did you have like some sort of traumatic Marco Polo incident that, where somebody ducked you down underwater or something like that? I've watched so many guys, grown men, bigger than me, if you can believe that, come up out of the water and look at me and, dude, that wasn't so bad. I was like, yeah, you big wuss. I mean, come on, dude. They're like, man, I don't know why I waited so long, because that's what fear does. You see, ladies and gentlemen, our circumstances can always change. Do you know that? I've seen this happen so much in my life, especially in America. Have you ever noticed that America, there are people that can go from broke to rich seemingly overnight? Let me let you know why that is. Because in our economic system in America, people will buy your stupid idea. Have you ever seen that? I remember one night, it was about 10 years ago. It's late, and man, we got a fire going on. We were living in another state, and all of a sudden, I saw this advertisement for this invention called the Snuggie. Come on, y'all know what I'm talking about? So I'm sitting there, and I'm just laughing, and I'm like, what a stupid idea. Jennifer goes, whoever invented this is brilliant. And I was like, what do you think? She goes, think about it, Chad. It's a blanket that you can wear. I'm like, this has got to be the stupidest thing. And she goes, this person's going to be a gazillionaire. And you know what? The other day, I looked around. We have like 5 of them in our house now. I was watching football with Will Roberts the other day. He's a part of our church. We were watching football at my house, and he had my Alabama Snuggie on there. He's like, ooh, this thing feels so good. I was like, oh, dear God in heaven. Only in America. Think about this. There are people that can just draw a face on a particular thing, and it becomes the hottest toy. Do you remember a couple of years ago, the pillow pet? I was like, so you got a pillow and you drew a face on it. Evan, my little boy, was about 3 when this came out. And how many of y'all remember when your kids were like learning to talk and you couldn't understand exactly what they were saying? Evan was like a mixture of Mandarin and Spanish, And so he comes up to me, and Jennifer goes, Dad, Evan's got something to say to you. And he goes, Dad, I found out what I want Christmas. And I was like, all right, I think I found out what I want. So you know what you want for Christmas? Yeah. And he looked at me and goes, I want a pipette. And I said, oh, Jennifer is rolling. And I was like, what's a pipette? And he goes, I want a pill pet. And I said, what is a pill pet? What's going on? Jennifer goes, no, it's called a pillow pet. And Evan looked at me and he goes, hadn't you heard the song, Dad? It's a pillow, it's a pet, it's a pillow pet. And I was like, for real? $40 later? There's like everybody gave their kid a pillow pet that year for Christmas. I thought, wow, what an incredible country we live in. Somebody draws a face on a darn pillow and makes $1 billion doing that. Ladies and gentlemen, for those of you that may be lacking hope today, I went down this little silly road to remind you that God can turn you from broke to millionaire overnight. But also, if you're here and you're hopeless, this church is filled full of people. Whenever they came here, their marriage was on the edge of divorce, and now they're like newlyweds, and it's kind of awkward. I looked down at one of these couples not too long ago. I was worshiping, and they like kissed in the middle of worship. I was like, that is disgusting. What kind of a home training do y'all have? And then I was like, well, you know what, man? God's done so much. And so it's kind of awkward, but it's kind of cool awkward. You know what I'm talking about? And here, ladies and gentlemen, our God is a God of hope. He restores us. He comes right in the middle of all of our situations, and he still wants to be able to come to us with our questions and everything. The second thing that I've noticed about belief is that I can believe beyond my failures. Who has seen the new Star Wars movie? How awesome is it? All right. My back started locking up because it went so long. Some of you are like, all right, Pastor Chad, don't say anything I haven't said. Don't worry about it, baby ears. Let me tell you, there's one scene in there that I looked at, I was like, this is awesome. So many of us have this wrong view of failure. Teenagers, college student, young entrepreneur. Let me let you know something. If you're ever going to do anything significant on this planet, you better get comfortable with failure, because failure is a part of life. And so at this one part, I'm not going to spoil any of the plot, okay? But I need you to hear this, all right? Yoda appears and is talking to Luke Skywalker. Dude, Evan and I were like elbowing each other the whole time. I was like, there's Yoda, man. Yoda hadn't made an appearance in a while. And Yoda was talking to Luke about failure. And in my greatest Yoda impersonation, let me tell you what Yoda says. He goes, the greatest teacher failure is. And I went, ooh, that is good. I am sharing that with the saints of Coastal Church this Sunday. It was awesome. Think about this. It's a great teacher. Whenever Jesus comes on the scene and is born, this is a time whenever God's people were dealing with a profound sense of failure. They've been striving to get ahead. And here's the thing. It happened just like so many of us, all right? They got caught up in what's called the tyranny of the cycle, all right? If you've studied theology, you'll see this. In the Old Testament, it seems about like 7 different moves, and they kind of like start all over again. All right, let me tell you. For those of us in the recovery movement, we know that I've been a part of the recovery movement for 24 years. And we learned something early on. The definition of insanity is what? Doing the same thing over and over and expecting a different result. All right? Well, Israel's literally done this throughout their history before Jesus was born. Because this is what they kept saying to one another. They'd say, if I just had this, then I'd really be happy and I'd be the exact person that God made me to be. All right, let me show you this history. All right, there in the book of Exodus, they're like, dude, if we just got our own land, then we could really be the people that God wanted us to be. You know what? We're just kind of like nomads and everything like that. If we just had our land, God, we would really be the people that you want us to be. And God was like, okay. So they got their land. And they're settling in it. And they look around these other countries and they see, you know what? These people got kings. I want a king. And they started calling out to God and they're like, God, I want a king. And God was like, no, you don't. You don't want no king. Unless you don't want. By the way, politics was not the original plan of God. Do your homework. I would expect a little bit of amen on that. God, you know what, Chad? That is good preaching. You know what? Those 3 of you that clapped during that time, thank you, family members who did that. You did it right on cue. But anyway, here's what happened. They said, man, God's like, you don't want this. And they kept asking for a king. And so God gives them a king by the name of Saul. Saul's name in Hebrew means ask. Okay, and so they did this big old thing. Like, God, go give us a king, and they showed this king to everybody. And guess what the thing? When they go to make this big old grand presentation, Saul was hiding from everybody. It was like God was saying, "Okay, here's what you've asked for." And for 40 years, they saw a man's cowardice. He taxed him. He treated him terribly. He killed innocent people. And so they began to change their prayer again. They're like, "Okay, God, got it." It's not about having the king. It's about having the right king. All right. Cool. We got it. We're there. All right. And God gives them a good king by the name of David. But they're still not happy. They go through this civil war with him too. And then they said, okay, I'm getting the picture, God. It's not just about having a king. You know what we need? We need us a temple. We need us a great big old temple because you're a great big old God. We're going to love you. We're going to worship you. You are the best. We need to build you a house. And God said, okay, go ahead, build us a house. And then guess what happened? That temple became corrupt. And people were skimming money off of it. And after a while, they're like, okay, we got this big old temple. And, you know, it's cool, you know, and everything like that. But it kind of got played out. And they said, you know what? We missed it just a little bit. Give us half credit, God. We got our temple, but you know what we need? We need your words. Send us somebody that has your words, and man, that we could really be the people you created us to be. God, send us prophets. And guess what? God sent them prophets by the name of Isaiah and Jeremiah. And guess what? All of them said, they were saying, you know what? You guys need to go back to the original where God was your everything instead of asking for more and more. And guess what they did? They ignored them. And he kept warning them, you better fix this. You better stop worshiping those false idols and stuff like that, or you're going to get took over. They ignored him. They're like, man, this dude's tripping. What's the matter with him? And then later on, their country got overtook, and they killed the king's son right in front of his eyes. And right after they killed the king's son, you know what they would do? They would gouge out their eyes, the king's eyes, so it would be the last thing they ever saw. And then they get exiled to another foreign country. And then by the book of Ezra, you see people saying, God, if we could just go back to the very beginning, we could get it right this time. And they'd start the cycle all over again. They become more and more corrupt. They become more and more confused. And many of us can relate to that today because many of us are in a cycle today too. Maybe you're in a cycle of addiction where you're like, I don't understand right now. My drinking has gotten out of control. Maybe you're popping pills like they're Tic Tacs. And here's what you got to understand. We created this church just for you. Maybe you're here and you're in debt up to your eyeballs. Maybe you're in a cycle of dysfunction in your relationships. When Jesus was born, everything up to that point, God's people had failed. And these are people who are dealing with profound despair. Some people would say, Chad, it's insane to think that God would want to have anything to do with me. Ladies and gentlemen, if you read the Bible, you see it's insane to think that God wouldn't want to have anything to do with you because that's exactly how this thing started out. It's the way that all the stories have happened. Christmas is about God coming on the scene and stopping the cycle of insanity in our lives. Look at this. So I can discover that I can believe and still have questions. I can believe and have all these fears and failures and issues. And because I believe and still have all these things, this comes to the final part. That you and I can believe and still have hope. You know, I encourage you, during worship time, all throughout the year, have you ever taken the time to like analyze what you've just sung? It's really powerful when you do. A couple of years ago, it was a real difficult holiday season. And I heard somebody singing "Oh Holy Night," and I just analyzed the words. Think about this. It said, "The thrill of hope, a weary world rejoices, for yonder breaks a new and glorious morn." Ladies and gentlemen, hope is essential for our survival. Many of you know I'm a big reader. A couple of years ago, I read this. If you haven't read it, I would encourage you to put this on your 2018 reading list. It's a book. The Library of Congress says it's the fourth most influential book that's ever been written in the history of mankind, and it's called "Man's Search for Meaning" by Viktor Frankl. Okay, this was a psychiatrist who was taken in to the Auschwitz concentration camp. And while he was there, he had his life's work, and the Nazis took it and destroyed it. And he made it out of the concentration camps. But while he was there, he was studying all of those guys that were in the concentration camp. And one thing that he wrote stood out to me so much. He said, those who lost hope of ever being rescued, they were quickly dead. They would say whenever people's language began to change and everybody like, we're going to die here. They said that within 10 days they were dead. They'd stop eating. Maybe all of a sudden they would finally get that disease. He said optimism was our only way out. You see, I believe that today God wants to put it in our hearts and our minds, every one of us, that God still loves to rescue each and every one of us. Think about the craziness of the Christmas story. All right. First off, God sends an angel to a 13-year-old girl, and he says, your ego is prego. All right. And she's like, what are you talking about, dude? I ain't never been with an old guy. What are you talking about? This doesn't happen. And then what happens is the angel begins to give him some instruction. And the first thing that he tells them is that it says in Luke 1:31, it says, you're going to conceive and give birth to a son, and you're to call him Jesus. Now, this is kind of significant because in Jewish culture, the firstborn male child was always supposed to be named after the dad. But they said, I'm about to shake some stuff up. Because when Jesus was born, his name tells his purpose. Watch this. In Hebrew, Jesus is pronounced Yeshua. All right? Ye means God, and Shua means saves. Are you following me around the barn, kids? Are you following what's happening here? It means this. Look at me. Whatever situation you're in that you need to be rescued from today, God sent Jesus to get us out of it. Some of you are like, Pastor Chad, you have no idea what kind of mess I'm in. No, I don't know. But I do know one thing. You have no idea about the mess I was in 24 years ago. And my God delivered me, and he'll do the same thing for you. Some of us would say, Pastor Chad, it's just too messy. If the name of Jesus, which means God saved, can inspire you, maybe where Jesus was born will inspire you. Look at Luke chapter 2, verse 6 says this. While they were there, the time came for the baby to be born. She gave birth to her firstborn, a son. She wrapped him in cloths and placed him in a manger because there was no guest room available for them. Where was Jesus born? Many say a barn. Many say a cave, stuff like that. But either way, it was a place where animals were kept. All right. I am not a country guy at all. All right. I knew at an early age that I did not want to be no farmer. I didn't know how to do any of this stuff. But I've been in a barn before. Anybody in here not been in a barn? You have lived a sheltered life if you haven't. But let me let you know, take the mystery out of it. Jesus was born in a barn, and some of you are like, oh, Pastor Chad, but it was like a heavenly barn. No, it was like every barn that you've been in, full of crap. But here, think about it. There was like more than one different breed of animal. We've just been in some barns where there's horses. All right. A couple of years ago during the Christmas season, my pastor would bring in like camels and all kinds of stuff. And we had this huge auditorium and stuff like that. And one day that camel, he got freaked out by the crowd and his stomach just like emptied. All right. And I was like, man, that camel was sick, and he left a trail going all the way up there. And so I think we had to replace the carpet. But anyway, it was kind of like one of the, hey, wouldn't be Christmas without an animal. Here's what we got to understand about that barn. There was nothing beautiful or glorious about it. Why? Because the barn represents the world that Jesus was going to be born into. It was going to be dark. It was going to be cold. It was going to be stinky, and it was going to be full of mess. Jesus was born in the middle of a bunch of animals. Ladies and gentlemen, that manger, there was nothing. Guess what? That was a feeding trough. Look at me. What does that mean to us today? It means that if you're living like an animal today and living in a bunch of mess and stench, you are just the type of person that Jesus came to earth for. You see, he identifies best with those who've been rejected, and it marked his ministry. God got right into the midst of our failures and the messes of our lives. And he was born right into it. Some of you are like, man, I've got too much mess going on. Jesus was born right into the middle of it. I love what one theologian called the God of the Bible. He said, you know what I like about the God of the Bible? He's the God of the straw. He was born right in the middle of mess and filth, and he comes right into our world. Let me wrap this up with you real quick. You read the Bible, not only will it change your life, but you're also going to find that it's fascinating literature. Okay? And the Bible gives two types of stories that inspire people. And they fall into two categories, okay? Write this down. The first type of category are 40-day stories, okay? These are like those wait and learn patience stories, all right? Some of you may be with me. We're like, 2017 was all one big 40-day story where I was learning about patience and stuff like that. And you just kind of had to learn, okay, lady, look, man, this didn't kill me. It made me stronger. 40-day stories maybe not be about God coming on the scene and changing things, but maybe God came on the scenes and changed us. changed our focus, how we feel about certain things. Where, you see in the Bible, there's 40 days at Sinai. There's 40 days on the ark. There's Elijah hid in the desert for 40 days. And Jesus was fasting in the desert for 40 days. 40-day stories are very, very common. But here's some good news for the rest of us today. Some of you are like, man, thank God, I believe my 40-day story is over. But the next one is probably one of the things that I love so much. Not only are there 40-day stories, the next one is there 3-day stories. 3-day stories are about crisis and urgency of a desperate need, and it's about hope hanging by a thread. 3-day stories in the Bible, here's what we got to understand about those. Either God comes on the scenes and rescues everybody, or it's curtains for everybody. All right? Maybe those of you read in Genesis, you see that Joseph said to the cupbearer, in 3 days, Pharaoh is going to lift up your head. And also he told the baker, in 3 days, your head's coming off. All right? Esther fasted for 3 days when the Jewish people faced genocide. Jonah was in the belly of the whale for how long? 3 days. The Bible said he prayed. Guess what? I'd have been praying if I was Jonah. God, please let me come out the same way I came in. Some of you who flunked biology, you'll get that reference later on. God told Joshua, 3 days you're going to cross the Jordan and possess the land that I'm giving you. The third day was so frequently used, it became an expression that meant a time to wait for deliverance. Hosea chapter 6 says this, come, let us return to the Lord. He's torn us to pieces, but he will heal us. He has injured us, but he'll bind up our wounds. After 2 days, he'll revive us. And the third day, he'll restore us that we may live in his presence. Ladies and gentlemen, do you feel like a failure today? Right now, times are tough. Your hope is crushed and your heart is disappointed. But a better day, a third day is coming. And I've been sent by God to let you know something today. That you and I still have to have hope, because I never know what can happen on the third day. Because that third day is God's day. Ladies and gentlemen, people that put their hope in the third day, God don't hope for something, they hope for someone. Because according to scriptures, the third day is the day when Pharaoh sets the prisoners free. On the third day is when mountain shakes and rivers are parted and people move into the promised land. The third day is when stones are rolled away and a crucified carpenter comes back to life. We put all of our hope in a third day God. And if you and I will put our hope in him too, our life will be changed. You don't have to live like this anymore, and you don't have to live like this anymore, and you don't have to live like this anymore. That spirit of depression this holiday season, I break off of you in Jesus' name. Live with hope again. You still serve a third day God. Don't you forget whose child you are. Don't you forget who has written your life up to this point. He's not led you here to abandon you. He's here to show himself strong and mighty on your behalf. And if you'll trust him, he'll prove himself. If you'll say with me today, God, I trust you. I don't understand how you're going to do this, but if there's one thing I see in the Bible, is that our God is still into deliverance. And I thank God for it. I see it every day. I see it on your faces right now. I see it how many of us have struggled, and we're on the other side of the struggle, and you're saying, you know what? God's been good to me. Maybe some of us are here today. Said, yeah, I've had all these questions, all this fear and failure. But now you can bring all that to God, and in that process, you find your hope. The Christmas story is a story of hope. That Jesus came into the mess of our lives, and he made a home in it. Jesus likes mess. He was born right up in it. Whenever he was born, I thought, hey, let me just waller in all this stuff with you. I'm going to show you how to get out. I'm going to show you how Jesus means God saves. And whatever situation you're in right now, he wants to rescue you from it. I see every day there's more people. The greatest message that we have is this message of hope, ladies and gentlemen. The reason why I don't take off during the holiday season, because I feel that pull on you. And every day, it's, Chad, you got to give them hope. You got to give them hope. Don't let them give up. By the way, I'm just preaching it to you like God preached it to me. You're not alone anymore. You're not by yourself. You don't have to go through this life discouraged and not letting yourself get too happy because you're waiting on everything to fall. Our God is still a God that rescues, He sustains, and He wants to take us to a life of elevated blessing like never before. Don't lose your hope, church. Don't lose your hope online. Don't lose your hope, because our God still rescues and delivers. And when you and I remember that, that is when the Gulf Coast will be saved. Would you stand? Let's pray. So, Father, I thank you today for the wonderful privilege I've had to share your word with people I just love and respect so much. And Father, I just ask that whatever we're facing today as your children, that you'd help us to remember that you're still the same yesterday, today, and forever. You love us. Work miracles this week like never before, God. May people testify at this time next week saying, I can only tell you that God came on the scene and rescued us and delivered us in the thrill of hope restored in our life. We love you and we thank you for it. In Jesus' name. With every